Welcome back to another video, guys. In this one we will be tearing down the 1968 340 X-head block that we got with our 1970 Barracuda. This motor's been sitting in the bush for upwards of 10 years, literally laying down in the dirt. It is in super bad shape. In this one we're gonna see if we can get everything torn down. We're gonna get everything full of oil and see if we can start breaking some bolts loose. Hopefully we don't snap any bolts off, but I'm sure we'll get there. Hope you guys enjoy. So we just pulled the 340 block in the shop. We did have it sitting outside after we picked it up. We picked it up at the same time as the 70 Barracuda. This was a package deal with this motor, the Barracuda, and a Chrysler Imperial. This block had been in the Barracuda at one point. He said they took it out, I believe it was for the transmission damage, and they never put it back in. This block's been sitting on the ground. As you can see, it has suffered extreme deterioration over the last 10 or 15 years. This was literally sitting down in the dirt. You can see our casting numbers there. If this is the original block that anyone knows of to anyone's car, send me a DM. This is a 340 block. Looking around it, this side's kind of hard to see, but there is an X there. I'll bring you guys around to the other side. This 340 does have X heads. They are desirable heads, I guess. I haven't messed with any small block Mopars really before. This is actually the first one that I've found. So we're gonna build it. This air cleaner's pretty junk. I don't know if it's worth saving or not. I did order a 340 pie tin just so it looks cooler. And we will be using the gold Moroso valve covers up there that I bought at the Barry swap meet last summer. So I had gotten the valve covers before I even knew I had a small block, but now we do, and we can put them on. So I'd really like to soak this motor down with as much penetrating fluid as possible, get the spark plugs knocked out of it, and we're going to let this motor sit for as long as we can, hoping that some of the stuff frees up and we can get it spinning over. Now, it does have a Holley carburetor on it. I'm not familiar with really any carburetors. I've messed with thermoquads before a little bit. I'm not the carburetor era guy. This one clearly is in very bad shape. All the linkages are frozen up. So I don't know if this one's even worth rebuilding. It's likely that these and the throttle shafts and whatnot will be practically welded into the body of the carburetor, so we probably are not going to be able to save this one, but it is worth a shot. We have a bunch of old diesel that we're going to probably put the carburetor just in a big tub of it and let it sit and just let it do its work, and hopefully we can get some stuff to free up on it. We will get this blown off. I just wanted to show the motor in its current form. Obviously it's full of junk and dirt and leaves, and we actually have a hole through into the valve train. So let's get the air hose out, get this blown off, and then I'd like to start to clean up the exhaust ports, get some spark plug wires off, and kind of just take it apart so it also looks not half bad. Get it all cleaned up, maybe see if we can knock these valve covers off and just get a couple walk arounds of it before we completely tear the thing down. This video is going to take a while. Obviously this motor is not going into any of the projects at the moment. This is just a fun side build that I'm going to do. I've wanted to put a 340 in something. I haven't decided if this will ever go into Barracuda. If we do that yet, we still have some build options on that. this motor doesn't have any specific intention necessarily, but it definitely will go into something in the future. We just don't know what it's going to be yet. This is going to be a long-term build, like I was just saying, because there's no rush for this motor, and obviously funds permitting, we'll spend some money here and there on it, but it's not going to be a quick turnaround. And the videos will likely be pretty scattered out. There's going to be no real timeline for this build. We're just going to plug away at it when we can, when we have a little bit of spare money, spare parts, and we can throw it at it when we have time. So let's get this thing cleaned up a little bit better. We can take a better look at it, and then we'll go from there. Now that we've got everything blown off, we can see this a little bit better. We're gonna have to hit this with some wire brushes and whatnot to get it a little cleaned up. But you get a little bit better look at the intake and the valve covers. Obviously, this motor is gonna have to have a lot of work. The cylinders are gonna be completely full of junk, debris, dirt, rust. And the pistons are most likely going to be completely seized in there. But it is still a cool motor. It's worth bringing back. These 340s are kind of sought after. They're getting a little bit harder to find. Like I said, this is the first one I've found while building my charger and just kind of in general. They're a cool little motor. You can do quite a bit of work to them and hop them up a little bit, and they'll run with a big block, no problem. So we're gonna get this thing kind of sprayed down with lubricant. When I want to get stuff broke free, a product that I really like to use is Shop Stuff. So this isn't a paid sponsorship by any means, but I use Shop Stuff. It's a like cooking oil almost based lubricant that works really good for me. It's Canadian based. It's actually locally based here in Algoma District. He's the guy that actually makes this, is not too far away from me. This product works super good. It really breaks stuff up. So I'm going to get this thing coated in a healthy layer of Shop Stuff, and we're going to hope that it breaks some of this corrosion and penetrates some of these threads, and it'll allow us to not spend a couple months trying to chase broken bolts. So we're gonna get this thing all sprayed down, and we can start disassembly. So we got the block all sprayed down with Shop Stuff. Put a healthy coat on it. As you can see, we got specifically we want to get these spark plugs out in half decent shape. So we put a healthy coating on that. Once again, it's not a sponsored video. I just really like their product. It works really well. Once we can get these spark plugs out, we can actually stick a borescope down into the cylinders, see what they're looking like. Our hopes aren't very high for them, but it'd be nice to kind of get eyes on it, and then we can start soaking down the cylinders with diesel, kerosene, Shop Stuff, WD-40, basically make a nice healthy little potion of stuff to put down there and start breaking up that corrosion. We also will at some point flip it over and check the pan, see if we can get the pan off. And we also sprayed a bunch of Shop Stuff down into the valves to hopefully get them locked up. I believe the best course of action is going to be to knock the rocker assembly and valve train off of both sides, and then that will allow us to spin just the motor. We can see if we can get it broke free after we soak down the cylinders. But this is definitely the worst side of the two. Heavy corrosion, as this side was actually sitting on the ground in the dirt. So anyways, we're gonna let this soak up a little bit. We're gonna head over to the hardware store, get a little bit of supplies, and we have some running around to do. I got to get parts for the shore box. We got to do brakes on that. So the quicker we get the plugs out, the quicker we can get the fluid in. I'm going to clean a little bit of this up just to make it look a little bit prettier. And we're going to shove this off to the side, let this soak, and we can kind of just work on it a little bit at a time, and just keep putting fluids in it and start breaking stuff free and try not to break anything off. That's going to be our main goal with this. And to do that, we're going to have to give it as much time as we can to get everything, let the penetrating oil do its work. Another thing I didn't point out earlier is this block actually has, it looks like a forged crank in it, because it's already pre-drilled for pilot bearing. So that's kind of cool. We're going to get stuff like these grounds, straps off, and we're going to get that off the old fuel filter, rad hose, stuff like that. We're going to get off so it looks a little bit better. So we'll bring you guys back in a little bit. Alright, so we let her sit up for a little bit. We're going to try and knock this valve cover off to see what the valve train looks like. Some of these bolts are in not terrible shape. Some of them, on the other hand, barely even exist anymore. So what we're going to do is we got some impact sockets, and I believe it's called a nut driver. But essentially what this is you smack the end of it with a hammer, and it rotates it left and right. And what it does is it shocks the bolt. I've had pretty good luck with getting super rusty bolts out with a tool like this. But relatively inexpensive. You can get them in a couple different sizes. I'd recommend getting this tool. But yeah, we're going to see if we can get this valve cover off, and we'll see what we find underneath and see how many of these we snap off. Alright, before we look at that mess, I just wanted to say having the right tools definitely saves you a lot of time. Between this and the specialty sockets for getting stripped bolts out, you could waste your time and try and smash a 12 point on there, but that bolt was completely rounded over. So we're going to have to pound this back out of the socket, and then we're good to go. That being said, we did pry the valve cover off, and I guess it's to be expected, but it is in super bad shape. Under here, obviously we have part of the root system that this tree was sitting on, or this motor was sitting under. We have part of the root system actually growing up in through the valve cover fairly extensively. That's all root system. This is likely all going to have to get cleaned up and replaced. We'll see how bad everything is. I also plan on taking this motor to a local machine shop to have the block and heads hot tanked, and Magnaflux just to make sure there's no cracks and get everything all cleaned up. But this is a lot of people would say this motor's junk. I say challenge accepted. Obviously with enough money you can bring it back, but I'd like to do it for as cheaply as possible. And at the end of this build series on this motor, we will do a cost breakdown for those that are interested and wondering exactly what it's going to take to bring this thing back. But who knows, some of this stuff might clean up. We just have to get it to that point, take a good look at it, see if it's worth it, and see if some of these parts are worth saving. But we're gonna have to get all this knocked out of here so we can get some penetrating fluid on everything to actually start doing some work. In the meantime, we can always jump over to one of the other projects. All right, so this side came out a little bit better. A lot of the bolts were in bad shape. Obviously, this side being up. Let's zoom you guys out. Up off the ground. So our valve cover's in a little bit better shape. Obviously, still unusable and pretty much junk. But the valve train is actually in not half bad shape. I know it looks bad, but obviously it's all in perspective. If you look at the other side, this actually looks pretty good. So same thing with this side. We're going to get it cleaned up, blown out. We're going to get a sponge penetrating oil. We're going to keep penetrating oil on it and keep everything soaked up so it starts to do its work. That being said, we did get the Moroso gold valve covers off the shelf finally with some orange paint and those valve covers and a 6-pack intake or something. It looked pretty cool. Now, if anyone has a 6-pack intake for a 340, shoot me a message on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. I would like to have at least an intake and or 6-pack carb setup for a 340. Still not sure what the plan is as of transmission and whatnot, or what this is even going in, but I would like to have a 6-pack setup at some point. 440 or 340, but specifically for this car. If not, in the meantime, I'm not super pressed on getting one. We can always have this intake blasted, find an intake, buy one, or whatever. We can figure it out. That being said, we're making some good progress. The majority of the rest of the bolts and whatnot are going to have to be soaked down for a while to avoid damaging any threads or bolts or snapping stuff off and causing us a huge headache and a lot more stuff to do. So we're gonna get this other valve cover on, probably take a couple nice pictures and fill that valve train full of oil and try and get some of the stuff broke free. What you can do, and what I'll probably do, is once I get this cleaned up and well lubricated and let it sit, you can take a little hammer and tap on these valves, obviously keeping in mind that your valve may be sunk into the head and has basically welded itself to the head with rust. So you got to keep that in mind. But we will take our time with this and lightly tap and see if any of them are freed up, and we can kind of go through them like that. Obviously, we'll have to take a look at the push rods and everything else, but in due time, we will get this cleaned out and we will go from there. So conveniently, Dad actually took some of the old colored fuel out of an old tank that was attached to the house a couple of years ago. It's probably a 7-year-old diesel fluid, so it's not really good to go back in a vehicle, so it's actually perfect for this application. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give this thing a healthy coating of diesel. It'll act as almost like a detergent, lubricant, hopefully soak into the metal, start getting this stuff lubricated, start breaking that rust. This is one of many steps. We're going to keep soaking this thing down with as many different kind of fluids as we can. We're going to do the exhaust ports, and when we get the spark plugs out, we'll do them as well. This, like I was saying, this motor is going to be hot tanked at some point, so where this fluid goes, it doesn't really matter. Majority of it's going to be caught down in the pan, but we're just going to give everything a nice healthy coating, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm just going to go over how to get these spark plugs out. With super rusty spark plugs like this, what you're going to want to do is take a flat screwdriver, which I've already done, and just dig out any debris, any rust chunks and stuff around the spark plugs. And you're just going to want to get as most of that broken up as possible to allow your socket to fully seat on the spark plug. Next, what you want to do is make sure that your spark plug doesn't have part of the spark plug wire on it still or anything like that, or else it's going to jam up in your spark plug socket. So you're going to grab your spark plug socket. I'm just using a standard 13/16 in this case on this motor for these plugs. I got a big hammer, I got the impact driver. What I like to do and what I find works the best is soak them down when you start the job, like we did earlier in the video. Get some lubrication on there, some penetrating oil, start letting them soak. Next, I'm going to get a little bit of extension so it gives me some room. I'm going to put the socket on there. What you're going to want to do is hold it as flush as you can, and just give it a couple of taps to seat it. And then you're going to want to give it a couple good taps to actually set it in and shock the threads a little bit. Nothing crazy because you don't want to bugger up the threads, but just enough so you hear that dead ringer kind of hit. You know you're all the way on. Next, what I want to do is take my impact driver, put that on there. What you're going to do is, if you have it set to loosen, you're going to hold it counterclockwise. You're going to kind of keep tension, rotational tension on that. And you're going to take your hammer, keep twisting it with your hand as you go. Give that a couple strikes. Then what we can do is we then can come in with the impact. Now that we know that that spark plug's broken free, we can throw our impact on there. In that case, we need a couple more whacks. I do have the little M12 battery on there, so it's definitely not helping our situation, but we're going to give this one a couple more. It's still super tight in there, but I'm going to switch batteries. Same thing, you're going to repeat the process all the way across your spark plugs, and we'll just keep going down the line like that. we got all of our spark plugs out on the passenger side as well as the driver's side. As you can see, they've definitely seen way better days. The end of the spark plug is super jacked up. Let's see if I can get that to focus. They did all come out though without any thread damage, so that's good. Each of them kind of looks pretty much the same. We busted a couple porcelains, no big deal. It's not like we're going to reuse these anyways. So yeah, that's the easy way to get super corroded, super rusty spark plugs. Obviously you guys seen at the start of the video what these things look like. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take one good spark plug, put it in the hole, blow out all the rest of the corrosion around the hole with some compressed air, and we'll get everything cleaned up around the spark plug ports. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to fill the cylinders. We're going to fill them completely up with diesel fluid. That'll at least get something soaking. We can work on something else. We still got to go to the hardware, so that's going to get us started on this. And yeah, so we're making pretty good progress. This going on from here, soaking down the pistons is going to be one of the biggest things. So we'll probably let this soak for probably weeks and weeks and weeks, and we'll just keep getting everything else torn down around it. I'd like to get the timing cover off, see what it looks like under there. Hopefully it's not too rusty. The intake and carb and distributor can come out, just to get a look in the valley too. I want to for sure get the intake off to take a look at everything under there. And we can also fill up the valley full of oil and diesel fluid and penetrating oil, and that will allow us to actually get some of the lifters possibly unstuck. We can take the valve train off and get the lifters and rockers out and eliminate that. Get those out of there, so when we do go and try and break it free, and the pistons have been soaking for a while, it's a lot easier to actually rotate it over. Less moving parts, less seized parts and whatnot. So we're going to get these cleaned up a little bit better, and then what we're going to do is we can borescope the cylinders that don't have any fluid in them. Some of them, the exhaust ports were open enough. Some fluid got in there. We can borescope them, take a look at them, fill them up full of fluid. I'll bring you back when we're done that. So here we are, we got the borescope set up. I'm going to try and show you guys the best I can. We're just going into the front cylinder here. As you can see, there's our spark plug hole as we're going in. It's kind of hard to see on this display. There's the top of our piston. There's our cylinder wall up into the right hand corner. There is quite a bit of corrosion, which is to be expected. Here's our other piston. This one's closer to the top. Sludge build up on the top. for first-hand look. So, we do have lift off. The bottom of that carburetor has definitely seen better days. This thing is kind of full of diesel and penetrating fluid because I did soak it a bit. So, I'm going to set this off to the side and take a look down in the intake. There's a bunch of junk down in there. Alright, so what we had to do is we got a punch, put it into the base of the distributor, and then just kind of hammered up on it. And we got her just to pop loose. This is the first time looking at it. And what I suspect, she is completely locked up. And it's kind of hard to see in there, but it's not looking all that great. Alright, so we got the distributor out. I believe we have all the intake bolts out. They actually came out way better than expected. So that's good. I'm going to try and do this one-handed so we get this on film. Is popping this intake. Got a pry bar here. I'm going to try my best to get an angle on it and see if we can break the seal. The satisfying crunch of victory. There we go. So, should be able to grab onto this. And this intake is all there. Alright, and just like we expected. Alright, so we got the rocker arm assembly off. We did actually snap one of the bolts off in there, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of work. Luckily that's the first and only bolt we've snapped off this far, which I'm happy about. Other than that, these rockers have seen better days. We're probably just gonna go ahead and replace them. They're not too bad on price. These ones have seen better days. We'll see what can get cleaned up. Now, some of these push rods are loose. Some of them are solid. What we're gonna do is probably get an air chisel and just tap on the tops of these just to break them loose, and we'll slowly work them out of the bore. Same on the other side. Some of them are in there, some of them are just a little stuck. So we're gonna keep going. What we'll probably do is we'll get a bolt on the crank, get that pulled out, pull the balancer off, pull the timing cover off, see what the timing chain looks like. And we're almost ready to throw an impact, see if we can get these heads cracked loose. We're going to have to find the proper socket, and I'm probably going to use the impact driver because I really do not want to break those off. We're going to have to do an extensive amount of rust removal around the heads of these bolts, get them cleaned up as much as we can, and then we'll go from there. Other than that, majority of this stuff is just going to be too far gone. I'm sure the valves are all in bad shape as well, so we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, but steadily making progress. Please check the oil. And focus, but it's just rough. And it is actually rusted off. Anyways, so yeah, we're gonna see if we can get these heads off, see what the pistons look like, flip her over, get the pan, pull the pan off. For storage purposes, we probably will end up slapping the heads back on with a couple bolts and whatnot. I think the plan is going to be to actually pick this up, put it on a little crate, and put it in the back of the General. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can put it in the trunk to actually get it to the machine shop to have a hot tank and Magnaflux. Alright, so we got the timing cover off, we got our oil slinger, the chain is covered in garbage, and it is super tight and rusty. This side's not as bad. We got a bunch of this garbage here. It's a bunch of mixture of spider webs and rust and junk. Yeah, we kind of see a little ways in the pan there. We're going to flip this block over, assuming there's going to be quite a bit of junk kind of throughout. I just started making up a parts list as well, just seeing what we're going to need. I'm going to price that out tonight, see what exactly we're all going to spend on this thing, see if we want to do a budget build. We don't have a car in mind that we specifically need to put this motor in. I mean, it would be at home in that Barracuda, but that car is also a long ways and a lot of money out. So, I think what we're going to do is we're going to soak down the timing chain a little bit here. I think the timing cover can be cleaned up and reused. Alright, so it's the next day. We got the rest of the head bolts out. We've been letting this motor soak for the last couple of days. So yeah, as you can see, all the head bolts off. We got that side off. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Let's see if we can get this head off. It's loose. And we're gonna pop this off and show you guys the damage. So start on this side here. As you can see, there's a ton of sand and dirt on the top of that piston. Right off the bat, we noticed. If you can see that. I'm gonna pull it back in the shop for some better lighting so you guys can see what's going on here. Alright, so we got her back in the shop. Not really great news. You guys can see that there's a crack right there. Let's just grab a light so we can actually see what we're looking at. The shop is a mess right now. We've been running around crazy getting projects done, getting the short box done. So if you guys can see that a little bit better, there's a crack right there. There's also one right there. So this block will need to get sleeved. Get this thing cleaned up. Got the splash shield off there. I mean, the only good part of this is none of the rods have let go and blown a window in the block. That's all I can think of at this time, because everything else is so bad. So we're gonna get this vacuumed out. See what else we can find. Alright, so got all these main caps broke loose. We're gonna try and get them out. They're a little stuck on there, but we'll just give them a little easy tap with the hammer and we'll see how far we can get. Next, we're gonna have to take the rod caps off and knock out the pistons. They're in super bad shape, so we're gonna have to take our time, and they're probably gonna have to come out the bottom if we can't get the crank out. So we'll just keep working at it. Alright guys, it's been a couple days. We're kind of stuck on the 340 for now. We're going to have to spend a lot of time to get the pistons and the rods out and the crank out. It's going to be quite the process. Since it is still summer, we're getting into the fall now. We're going to save this for a rainy day or sometime this winter. 340 is going to be staying on the engine stand there, and we'll work at it when we have time. I still plan on at least getting the block cleaned up, and we can see if we can use it. Obviously it's in bad shape, but once it's cleaned up in a hot tank, we're obviously going to be able to see what kind of shape it's in. So we're going to work on that over the winter. That's going to wrap this one up, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and maybe we'll see this motor down the road. Maybe this will turn into a build series on just the motor. We have tons of projects going on, so we'll keep you guys tuned for that. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. Thanks guys. See you in the next one.